Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Logic here with Hardknocktv. I'm about to sit down with my boy Nick Huff to discuss my third studio album, Everybody.
Yo.
What's up, Doug?
What's up? I'm fucking excited, bro.
Me too. This is gangster.
This album right here, I can't wait for the world to hear, man.
And this next piece, children, as you already know, is called The Plaza, painted over 300 years ago back on Earth by the legendary Sam Spratt for Logic's third studio album entitled Everybody.
You went on a podcast, you said Africaryan was going to be the title of it. The album's evolved since then to take on different lanes and different subjects. Tell me about why Everybody was important for you to call the album that.
Well, you know, Yeezy changed his album title like 16,000 times, and It's like, you know, it is what it is. For me, it's like, I really stand behind that, what that title means. That's why there is the song Africaryan, and it's the crazy because the whole album leads up to that one song, which is just to talk about how I feel like I'm pulled in one or other direction, you know, that right. Like black folk who don't realize I'm mixed will treat me like I'm some racist person, or when white people find out I'm black, they treat me, you know, with racism, and it's like I just feel like I don't belong and I don't fit in anywhere. So that's what that term was about. Like, it is a negative statement, and it's like I'm either one or the other. As I created the album just became less and less about me and more about everybody else. You know, It became about other people's struggles. And I was simply only discussing race on this album for the first time because I had been so scared to do it before. And I realized that sometimes it's the things that we're most scared to do that are actually going to help others the most. So when people would come to me and say things like, yo, you changed my life, or you saved my life, in the back of my mind, I was like, for real? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then I think about it and I'm like, wow, when I went on that fan tour and started in Los Angeles, California and ended in New York City meeting the fans, all these people were like, yo, you changed my life, or this is what this means to me, or you saved my life. And they would keep saying this. And in my mind, I was like, man, I wasn't even trying. I wasn't even trying to save a life or this or that. What could you imagine if I actually tried to do that? And so that was me just being bold and being honest and discussing things that I've always been scared about. Originally, the title was going to be called God, and not in any type of sacrilegious way. It's literally an album about God in a very beautiful way. It's not hindering any religion or this or that. It's almost like a sci-fi take on religion and respecting everyone and all this other stuff. But then see, just like with you know, the earlier title, if I had gone with that, then people would be like, what the fuck is he trying to say? But it's like literally like, no, it's just it's a respect to the Almighty. But people just in society, they just, what do you mean? How could you do this? How could you do that? And it's kind of crazy to think that people could be pissed off for me titling an album God or so. You know what I mean? It's really crazy when it's like, God is beautiful. God is, you know, whether you believe or not, or this or that, it's deeper than that. So long story short, over time, the tracks, man, it became about everyone else. You look on the album cover, who's on the album cover? Everybody. Who's this album for? Everybody. What perspective am I rapping from? Everybody. So it just felt awesome, and I wanted to make it more about that and not try to make it a fight about what's going on in my life. So that's why I think this is like my most selfless album, with the exception of discussing my race, which is something I needed to do.
Do you feel like people are putting you in a box?
I think people have already put me in a box just because of my appearance, first and foremost, which sucks. You know, that's just where we are in society. I think it's even more creative-wise, you know, because like, I've always worn my inspirations on my sleeve, and the crazy thing about this album is it don't sound like nothing, and yet it's all a culmination of all my inspiration. So it's like everything I've ever had to do to get to this point, you know, loving Nas and Jay-Z and Big L and Tribe Called Quest and Kendrick and Cole and, you know, Toro y Moi, or, you know, any of these, like, you know, Nirvana and just jazz and King Pleasure and all these different incredible artists and musicians that I took things from and was inspired from. And, you know, I went through my career trying to learn how to do what. When I first started making music, it was like, I was trying to sound just like the RZA. I was trying to sound exactly like this person because that's what I thought was the best. And if I could emulate the best, then I could take that, learn from it, and then go on to do my own thing. And I did do that. I did that with so many artists in the game, and that's why you have albums like this, and then you have your Bobby Tarantino, and then you have your, you know, Young Sinatra raw raps, And it took years, and it took people going, you sound like this, and you that, and you rap like this, and you rap like that. And, you know, 1 minute you try and do trap, 1 minute you try and do this, pick it, like figure out what you want to do. And I was like, no, I want to do it all. I want to do it all, and I'm going to do it all. And I really feel like this album is a culmination of that. The world is telling you to draw inside the lines, paint inside the lines, like, you know, do things a certain way, do things this way. But this is art, you know? You don't got to like it. That's fine. But don't tell me what to do, what I should do or what I shouldn't do. I had read just on the internet randomly on my Twitter, and somebody was like, I forget what it was, but it was along the lines of like, we definitely need an album like this. It was like when the concept of the album came out, we need an album like this, but like Logic ain't the one who should be saying it. And it's just because of how I look and what people, the perception or whatever. Because like, what do you mean? I'm black and white. I see things from both sides of the spectrum of this or that. If anything, having this multicultural aspect of the world brings me to a place of less bias than others, you know?
As a first generation immigrant who came into this country, people are always like, oh, you need to assimilate, you need to learn the language, you need to become American.
Yeah,
and I was like, I always want to keep a part of myself.
Of course.
And also like figure out what that means, which is same thing as being biracial. It's like you try to figure out, it's like, okay, I'm part black, I'm part white. Where do you fit into this line? Because you're not one of either, but you're some of both, but yet you're something different because you're a combination of
Once you realize that you don't fit in, everything's great.
Yep.
When you realize you don't fit in, it's totally cool. And then people will really love you for it. And there's always the people that are going to hate you, but like, man, I think I said something the other day on Twitter about like how I'm like scared of rejection. I was like, oh, if I was like, attention all other artists at festivals. If you ever see me and you think I'm like being weird or this or that, like I'm just scared of rejection. I don't want to go out because I've gone to so many rappers and be like, hey, how are you? And they'd be like, yeah, what's up, duck? And just like, that's it. And I'm like, well, fuck you then, you dickhead. Like, I was just trying to be a nice person. I don't give a fuck how much you rap or you think you got money or this or that. Like, I got way more money than you. I don't throw it in your face. The fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, bro, just shake my hand. Be a good fucking person. Stop acting like a bitch. Like, straight up. And I'll say shit like that on Twitter, and I'm like, man, people probably weren't gonna like this, but I'm just gonna be myself. And then there's so many people that are like, oh my God, I can relate to that. I can relate to like not feeling accepted or this or that. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's like the more I realize like I'm not accepted in where I originally wanted to be, the more I realize I'm actually a pioneer in creating and culminating a world for people who don't feel accepted to come. I don't know, it's really weird. Not that I'm the only one. I mean, there's people like Cudi and so many other amazing artists. Drake is another person who is himself, you know what I mean? This half Jewish, half black, Canadian rapper. People try to say is soft because it's like, fuck all that, man. This dude's a fucking person. And yeah.
I just love that the new generation is redefining what it all means. Like,
So
there's
dope.
no normal. It's like there's no this is the right way, this is the wrong way. It's like the right way is to be you, and that's probably going to be different. If you're really you're not going to be like anybody else.
No, I completely agree. That's why the robot is the mascot, because the robot to me, and it's like an open kind of thing, but that's just the true to form mascot, a mascot of every human being ever that has ever lived. So when you think of everything that we have ever pretty much learned or understood emotionally, minus human consciousness, is on the internet. And the internet is a bunch of binary ones and zeros and microchips and all this stuff. So it's like, I thought like AI, artificial intelligence, is the closest thing to every human being in the world. So in a fun sci-fi way, that's why you have the robot that is just kind of like a fun representation of all man, or at least all man's knowledge up into this present point or moment, or in the future, I guess you could say, whatever. But yeah, so it all kind of ties together, which is fun.
Can you give us a little backstory on how you conceived that?
So this is a short story written by this amazing writer named Andy Weir, and he wrote the book The Martian that went on to become the movie with Matt Damon. And this is literally just my take on it. It's extremely similar, and I contacted him and was like, yo, I'm so inspired by this, I want to turn it into an album. And he was like, okay. He's just like the nicest guy, like, hey, somehow got his email and just asked his permission. He was like, yeah, sure, no problem. That's so nice you like my writing. And I was like, fuck yeah, man. So once that was kind of down, I just took so many key elements from what he wrote and applied it to my flavor and like choice of words to also then connect with not necessarily just a younger audience, but a musical audience, I guess I would say. And I don't know how it worked, man, but it did. Cause like I had the idea to like do that, to do the skits, but then it hit me to be like, well, what if I actually rapped from the perspective of all the lives that this guy is living. And that one was like extra crazy. And somehow it just kind of came together. I just sat down one night and just wrote it all out, and then it worked.
Let me know how Neil came into play for this album.
This is tight. On the last album, on The Incredible True Story, I reached out to Neil deGrasse Tyson to have him speak over the intro called Contact on the Incredible True Story. So I thought, how amazing would it be if he spoke, and it was this really cool thing. And so we kind of got connected through email, and he was like down to do it, but it just didn't work out. He's like busier than me. Time went by, and then he was on Sway in the Morning with his nephew, Steve Tyson, who did that B.O.B. diss about the world not being flat but being round, called Flat to Fact, which is hilarious. And somehow I came up in the interview, and Neil goes, "Oh yeah, Logic. Yeah, I know Logic. Yeah, we're supposed to be doing something together. We're gonna do something together, whatever." And I was like, "Oh shit, that's like gonna happen?" Like, because I was like, he'd like still be down to do something. This whole thing. So then I contacted Sway, and was like, "Hey man, do you think like you can like really connect us like for real?" And so he somehow did, and then I ended up talking to his nephew, Steve, who's like just awesome and a really great guy. And somehow through all that, me and Neil got together. And we got together, and I told him about the concept of the album and all this, and he said he was totally with it. And, fast forward a few months, I was in New York City for Comic-Con for The Incredible True Story again, I think so. And then we linked up at the studio, and we just knocked the whole thing out together there, and it was really cool.
Now, what was his reaction when he read the script?
You know what's really crazy? I wasn't sure, just as like, somebody like him who's like a professor, a doctor, I was a little nervous because I'm like grammatically and all this shit, like I'm not that good, I'm just like whatever. Like I could definitely consider myself a writer, but not in like the technical aspect. And so I sent it to him, and he was like, "Okay, there's just 2 things." And I was like, "Oh shit, just 2 things. That's cool." I was like, "That's great." And he was like, the first thing is, I don't know about the word negativity. And I'm like, "Oh, all right. I don't give a shit. Like, okay, you don't like negativity, we can change the word." And I was like, "But why?" And he was like, "That's just too many syllables." So he likes everything to be very finite and as short as possible. He believes that if you don't have to draw something out, that you shouldn't. But then after reading the script, he actually found that it fit best the way I wrote it. So he ended up saying negativity. Just don't worry about the negativity of others, which is at the end. And then the other thing was, I would use the word mankind to talk about everybody. And then he just went into like the scientific reasoning behind that. And mankind is like not really a representation of all humanity. It's more like a male dominant thing, or this, that, all this other shit. Even though that's not how I meant it. And he knows that's not how I meant it. But he's a fucking doctor, and he was teaching me. He's a teacher, and he was like, "Yo." So he just changed that to humanity, and that was it. So, but he read the whole thing, and he really, like, I just wasn't sure. Because, when you have this guy, somebody that's like, just as famous and well-known as him, and I'm like, "Hey, I want you to do this." Like, and I'm directing him, and I wrote it, and I'm like, "I want you to do this how I have it in my mind," because that is a big deal. And with actors, you can pay people whatever, and they can say, "Hey, well, what about this?" And you can take heed to their direction, but you go, "Yeah, if I can wrote it, you're going to read it like it is." Not to be a dick, but it's like, "Yeah, thank you. But we're going to do it like this," right, just because that's my vision. So it was really cool that I was still myself and did the same shit with him, but that he understood it, and that he really realized what I was trying to do and what I was trying to say. He was familiar with Andy Weir, who wrote the original. He was familiar with what it was based upon, and he really loved what the whole thing stood for, and that's always really cool when you have like your heroes or people that you really respect and appreciate, and they understand what you're trying to say.